you so much for all of that information. And in my own reading as well, and what comes out a lot as you speak as well, is this tension that you keep sort of coming back to, which in a few words basically comes to the fact that a lot of the interventions have basically been sort of top down in terms of engagement of people on the ground, right? And part of your recommendations is to have more sort of what you call these sort of co-creational kinds of bottom-up kinds of approaches, right, as interventions that may assist with effectiveness when it comes to public participation to enhance the whatever the DDM looks like for those different districts, right? Do you, yeah, and you speak to some of these alternative ways where you find that people still feel like protests are their only solution for them. So they'd rather embody their frustrations than to go and intellectualize them and speak about them in formal meetings. So rather embody my frustration, go out on the streets, show them in these embodied ways that I'm frustrated, I'm at my wit's end here. So that in relation to the fact that some people don't even understand what the DDM is all about and how they are supposed to be affected, those together already causes this tension where maybe the interventions are just not going to work. What I want to ask you is also in the and this is presumptuous of me in saying that in Mopani district, right, a lot of the surrounding areas maybe still are being run by traditional leaders, right? And a lot of times traditional leadership have oftentimes been almost top down where there was, and like I'm saying, I might be presumptuous here, where traditional leadership was a bit top down, whereas people in the village are informed by the chieftaincy or by whoever the leaders are about certain things. And then it oftentimes didn't have that back and forth, almost bottom up. Correct me if I'm wrong. So maybe isn't this culture then of a top down approach at the core of some of these areas in the Mopani district, which also then blocks why a bottom-up process may not be effective? Are people just not used to then being informed about things and told that this is what's going to happen, this is how it's going to help you? Now let's wait and see. Are some people just not too used to it now that trying to change it may not be effective? Am I completely off?
No, you're not completely off. And I think one thing that also, in as much as, and I think one of the examiners also raised this during the defense to say, but these are also fixed structures in terms of traditional leadership. Yes, I acknowledge that, but the fact that I was driving at is that you would have them call communities when there are a problem to say, let's have a discussion, let's hear different views in terms of how we approach it. That is the communal. While I also understand that their own structural arrangements sometimes may not even favor, for an example, even women, because some
Yeah.
women are excluded from those discussions. But also my worry is that while they have their own challenges, they are also being co-opted into political, governance structures, which means that you erode the entire traditional leadership, process. Then that's when then I say that maybe there is a need for emphasizing that innovative democracy actually is not even a case. It's actually something that people can actually tap into, because participatory and representative democracy seems to fail them. So innovative democracy, where they think of innovative ways, of course, which are accepted within the confines of the law, they must use those to actually move. So we need auto to I think the problem that we have, and I think throughout reading the literature and doing this study, is that in South Africa we tend not to take from, if you look at the governance process, it doesn't seem to want to stick to one process. There's this tendency of amalgamation. For an example, they will say in the public participation framework, they say South Africa adopt both deliberative and participatory democracy. and that on its own, it's a problem because you ought to decide how do they work. You have to find ways in how do these two work, and how are they going to work together? Because at the same time, sometimes, when you say deliberative democracy, you are interested in dialogue and discussion, informing the decisions that we make. But at the same time, after that deliberation and discussions have been taken, they are still being taken again to a participatory process where numbers are going to count in terms of votes and accepting policy, IDP processes. You see, that becomes also a process and that is what the communities are frustrated with. We spend time discussing, giving recommendations, but when we are given the blueprint of how the IDP for 2025, 2026 is going to look like, some of our views didn't even make it to the final blueprint. And why should we engage in this process? And that is why time and time again, like you have said, they will see alternative measures. And coming back to the issue of traditional leaders, and I think this also needs to be discussed intensively, where we need to discuss the issues of legitimacy there in terms of stakeholder prioritization. They enjoy the social contract that they also have with communities, but I think some of them, based on the discussions that we have, they tend to misuse it. And some of them, as being representative of communities in those forums, they become now partners in what government do. Some of them have even adopted the methods that government use to engage with communities, abandoning their own, engaging in now methods that look like now, is the same process. And the relationship sometimes between the councillors and the traditional leaders also tend to lead to this, because in our communities, if you are a councillor, even if you want to call a ward committee, you need to inform the Induna that we are going to do that. And once people see their Indunas participating there, and you also ought to acknowledge that when they come there, they also come as members of the community, they ought to participate. So I think we also have that in terms of top-down kind of an approach. It is there because people, got used to that, but to some extent, some methods that are used, some such your mahuta that are used there, it's just a discussion to say, people, we have these issues, what do you suggest? And they take them. And to see that they have broad results, you see that there are social innovations that are now coming into community. Some of them are even independent from traditional leaders, although they were part of the discussion. So they are acknowledging and giving communities that kind of an autonomy that you can do what you want to do. We are also acknowledging that your government is failing you, so do what you can. We'll see how we can assist you. But what I like about traditional leaders, especially in embracing communal values, they try to bring together government and the citizens. Said, our citizens are suffering. You have promised them this, you have not delivered. What are you doing? They still play that kind of an important role, but with changing circumstances and everything, sometimes it may be kind of this. We have a problem of a top-down approach, which sometimes doesn't speak to and sometimes sidelines certain people, because once certain figures in communities have suggested certain things, there are even, uh, uh, democratic expression. Sometimes it may even be expressed as if now you are undermining the authority of certain people, but while you are doing that, and the issues of dealing with complexities between the ruling party and opposition parties also come into play into these discussions, because some discussions, when they are discussing your IDP, they are not even based on merit, on community interest, but also to advance, political interests. Imagine if you were to have an IDP meeting this year, your local government, election year, what kind of things that are going to be featured there. And then people who can even stand there to advance there. And I think also the differentiation between people when now they are public representative, that I'm no longer serving my party. This is not an ANC, this is not an EFF meeting, but this is a community meeting where we need to listen almost everybody. Those are the things that come into play. Yeah.
Love those. And it makes clear that that sense of inclusivity that you speak about or that you touch on in the title already, it becomes so clear when you speak to me. Because I was trying to play devil's advocate to say, are you trying to change? I try to reinvent a wheel that doesn't need reinvention with you now preaching this bottom-up kind of approach. But you've convinced me so well, actually, that yes, sort of social innovative inspired kinds of bottom-up processes might actually be much of the solution here. And I like that, because then there is that sense of inclusivity that is important. And that inclusivity needs to be nuanced as well, right? Where people know what they are included in, right? Because if you're going to include me in conversations about the MDD, or am I mixing it up now? DDM, DDM, and I don't even know what the DDM is. It's sort of counterproductive. So let those processes of inclusivity also be informative as well, right? Can the process be patient enough to inform people exactly what the district development model is, how it is intending to affect people on the ground, and simplistically what they should know and how their support will actually come of assistance. But then the other problem is then inclusivity here and participation here might be performative a lot of times, is what I hear from you as well, where
Yes.
municipal or council members or district municipal representatives just sort of do these kinds of public participation efforts just as a performative thing to tick some sort of box to say, yeah, we did go out to the people. And like you say, at the end of the day, when whatever findings come out and whatever is being implemented, you find that the voices of the people were not actually included. So that was just performative kind of inclusivity. Any sort of solutions to that? Who could be part of those accountability frameworks? What accountability frameworks could we put in place? You've touched on traditional leadership could play a beautiful middleman kind of role. Are there any other accountability methods or measures to ensure that these inclusivity, public participation efforts are not just performative to tick a box?
The central problem is that public participation is an ongoing process. There's a tendency of only including communities at a certain phase. And that's it.
Yeah.
When you are at the planning stage, you include them. Oh, no, let's have ideas on how the plan is going to look like. When the time comes for implementation as well as evaluation, when the time for evaluation comes, evaluate with them. You and I sat in the planning stage. We planned for this. Now let's evaluate what we had agreed on. It's planning this year. They disappear. Come back next year, we're planning for 2026, 2027. There's no reflection to say, let's reflect on what we take them through the entire process.
Yeah.
Some councillors need to come back and say, you have sent me an honest conversation. Send me with 5 items. They were only able to, people, and this is one of the nice phrases that I continuously been put at my masters. People will appreciate that even if things did not work out the way they planned, at least inform them that were anticipated to get 5 things, but they can only accommodate due to budgets. People are not ignorant of facts. They are not that stupid. If you tell them we anticipated for 5 things, but in their budget, they can only accommodate us for 2. Let's try the 3 next year. They understand. They know that if we only see a clinic and a road, that's what they could accommodate us. And also show them how is the balance, how are the resources fairly distributed to everybody. People will understand that, but they will get shocked to say, oh, on our side, we get a clinic, they get a good road to their cemetery, and their cemetery is fenced that side. Ours, there's nothing that is happening. If you don't come back and say, this is how things went by, we tried to push for the 5 things, but we can only be given 2, and this is how things I'm going to. And also take a mandate from them to say, what do we do?
Yes.
See, there's a tendency of councillors going there. Like you said, the process needs to be patient enough. Engage with people, let them tell you what they want, consolidate, take it back to the highest decision-making body, which is now the council. So these are the 5 things that the communities want, and they say they are a priority. So in terms, you must also list them in terms of priority. They say their priority is water. You can stop other things for now, but give them water for now.
Some water.
Give them water for now, and the rest of the things will come back. And then you go for the list that they want. Also, again, what you give them should also be informed about what is a priority to them, not a priority to the selected few. And then if they say we can't give them water, you say, wait, I don't want to decide. Let me go back to them and ask them, is it acceptable or not? The process needs to be patient enough so that those decisions reflect what people want. It's interesting enough that I read in one article that even public participation was not a natural thing. At some point, government need to be taken to court so that it's implemented. So you have got that thing that, if someone is implementing something that they were forced to do, so at some point, these are the kind of things, inform people. The process needs to be patient enough to accommodate people, but they do try in some areas to try and do that. But we still have a problem where there's a disconnection between what people want and what is being implemented, which I think is a central problem everywhere. They will tell you, we told them this is what we want, they gave us something else, which can be very problematic at some point. Yeah.
Stunning. It's clear the kinds of solutions that you are proposing, right? And to me, they are sensible, right? And I don't know, in some of the conversations, if you had some of the conversations, especially with the sort of municipal representatives, if you had those conversations, if you heard sort of pushback and so forth. But to me, the way you express them, it's sort of clear. Then if government representatives, right, who are actually representing the people at local level, at district level, and so forth, if they have the kind of patience to do these kinds of informative back and forths, then maybe a lot of the issues that they are always faced with will not repeat themselves. Because like you said, if you go back to people to say, we had 5 things that were prioritized, but we could only achieve 2 of those things, and this is the 2 of those things. What do you think about these 2 things? Then people can let them know. And from there, how do we prioritize the rest of the stuff on the list and give people timelines? If you have the kind of patience to do that kind of back and forth. But we know that for a lot of us, that's not the case, where these representatives whom we vote into these positions at some point detach, ideologically detach in terms of experience as well, which is also funny when the councillor comes from the same community. But for some reason, when they become councillor, they sort of detach, either move to suburbia or whatever.
Exactly.
And
I
now,
was about to say that now they no longer see.
Mm,
That's why in my
yeah,
findings I also painted out and said there's a deterioration of a social contract, that it
yeah,
only plays out for a certain period. After that is deteriorated. And
yes.
now these tend to pollute the public sphere, because when you go into now these discussions, because this happens, play around in the public sphere where public opinion is formed about certain things, that once you have got a deterioration of a social contract, like you see, people now detaching themselves, forgetting that people actually, gave me the responsibility to represent them. But if I'm not there on the ground to see what's happening, if I'm the one who's sleeping in dark for 3 days, I'm in the suburbs, then you are totally detached from this. That's where now I also talk about the deterioration of communal values. You no longer see yourself as part of them. You are now part of something else. That also on its own, it's a problem. But what I like and what became so interesting is how our people are becoming informed. If I saw what I did from my master's and my PhD, you see that our people are no longer ignorant. They see themselves as active citizens, and see the role of social media on how it's conscientizing them to now to know, understand what is happening, what is being said, and all of those things. It becomes very, very important. And you and I may even think that the bottom-up approach is not happening, but it's actually happening. Let me give you an example to show you how it's happening. And that is also my emphasis, and said public participation should not only start when people are elected. It starts within the process of how political parties conduct themselves. If you see now, the approach has changed. Political parties have realized that the bottom approach, in as much as we have ideological understanding of things, but we ought to change. And this is what I've come to appreciate. And I hope that in these elections this year, this is going to brew good results. Political parties now are going to community and said, here we are, here's our mandate, but we want you to choose amongst yourselves who can better represent these ideas. So the bottom approach started there. That is not a group of elites in a political party to say, by virtue of you being a chairperson of this region or a ward, you automatically becomes a mayor. They go to people and said, here is our ideas, here what we think the future looks like. Can you then give us people who can better represent us? And I hope if they stick to that, then we can extend, public participation beyond just after the elections, but we can then advocate that the bottom approach. And I think once people appreciate that I came through this process, and I think it will even, contribute to issue of voter turnouts. People can't go and vote. People they didn't even put in the ballot in the first place. It starts from there. That's why we have to take this process, far step back to say, and I think I appreciate that because I've seen a lot of political parties are taking that approach to say, let's go to the communities, let our candidate be from the communities, let them look around among themselves and said, these ideals that you are coming up with, this is the best person we think they can better, represent those ideas. And I hope that, need to be followed up and see what changes it brings into things. We must also not be ignorant that politics in South Africa are changing, and coalition politics also bring into question how you then prioritize stakeholders. How do you practice? How do you even exercise even patience to negotiate and convince people that a one kind of a political dominance, but so all these things even literally change communication, how you communicate. Imagine you are a communication officer working in a municipality that has got a college in government, where your strategy is informed by different ideological, interests and all of those things. You ought to be able to navigate how you then navigate, and anticipate changes and understand the complexity in its highest level that we now face. Like I told you, that people ought to realize things have changed. The district development model in its entirety says to you that government alone can no longer be the decider of what is good for society. We ought to bring other stakeholders, and through this process, we need to work together, not just in the planning stage, but throughout the process, which changes kind of power dynamics and control over how things are done.
Excellent. It gives me hope though.
Yeah.
Studies of the nature of yours and others within the sphere of government communication, right? Stakeholder communication, public participation gives me sort of hope for kind of future where everyone is all important stakeholders are taken into consideration from the
Yes.
very start of the process
Mm.
until implementation and beyond as well. So thank you for the work that you do. Very important work. Um, just in a few words, if you could just close us off with personally, by the way, if you knew then what you know now, right? Post PhD, if you knew then and then can be pre PhD, pre masters, if you knew then what you know now, are there things you're going to do differently in the PhD, or in your postgraduate journey entirely, or has everything happened just as you expected them to happen, or you're just good with how everything has happened? There's nothing you'd change. It is what it is.
Well, I think I appreciate the outcomes of my PhD. The reason why I say this is that something that I realized at the later stage when I had a PhD, and I hope people who are doing their postgraduate studies, especially if your studies the study of the study of my nature, you ought to, and this is what I appreciate, and I would tell people every day that you ought to. You can't, like for myself, I can't be advocating for a heterogeneous process of identifying stakeholders, but yet my approach in terms of who I'm going to interview is also fixed, which might not bring into final. Even places where you are looking for data are fixed, in terms of that. I realized this at the later stage when I was struggling now to find people. I'm like, what is it that I'm doing wrong that I cannot even find people? I said, maybe I need to lower my bar and start looking for that. So I then decided that everywhere I go, every time I'm home or I'm around Mopani district, wherever I see a group of people gathering, I ought to engage them about my topic. They will direct me to different places. Trust me, there's a lot of things that I found out. Every time I attend a funeral, there was a counselor, there was so and so who was speaking there. I have a small conversation with them. Can we talk about? And then they say, yeah, no, yeah, you can also talk to so and so. He leads the agricultural what here in the communities. They are also part of a project. And you didn't realize this social innovation that I was looking for tags, they are not far-fetched from where I am. These are the people we live with every day. And trust me, they've got the practical knowledge that we are looking for. So I said academic studies don't have to be reserved to academics. We need, especially if we are to promote indigenous knowledge systems, the people that are just at our fingertips, we need to talk to them. And that helped me to even end up with the data saturation now, because now I was finding information elsewhere from people who say, no, you can also talk to people. And trust me, and I want to tell people this, and this is what I've come to appreciate, especially with my experiences with the traditional leaders that I have approached. They are always looking forward to people, researchers coming into communities, help them navigate these things. It's the kind of reception that I got, the kind of follow up, whether I was satisfied with what I got. Do I need to an extent that they and that was this also how we engage as researchers. Be willing to say, I'm willing to assist where I can, what your interests are, and all of those things. I remember one of the focus groups that I made, I didn't even have to make any effort. I just spoke to the administrator in the traditional. I said, no, who else do you want? We can talk to them. And they booked the entire boardroom for me in the municipal in the traditional leadership council. They brought everybody. Simple and easy. I was able to have a conversation with almost everybody that I needed. So we mustn't say, we think because your study is focusing on it, you need to rely on politicians. There are people down there with the kind of knowledge, the kind of stuff that I was able to get. I got from people that I least expected that I would get from. So there mustn't be this thinking. Even the municipalities themselves, I must not even paint their reception, their level of follow up, because they've got an interest in where they can see someone is interested to help us navigate what we could do. Organize everything on time. Let you know what time are you going to arrive. Bring everybody that you need there, and when they accept criticism that we may shortfall of things that we may not see, because we have been doing this thing for some time. Sometimes you don't realize that there are changes. So I think your approach also, and the level of patience, and be open up. And I think we need to, that's what I learned in my study. When you request for access from people, make it as open-ended as possible so that they're able to assist you. Otherwise, you'll think doing study in this kind of context is very difficult, because tell people, also let them know that however you think this can improve my study, whoever think can and make a contribution to this, let me know. And they'll bring everybody for you. You don't have to look for data in offices and stuff. Funerals, in soccer matches, in some community gathering, and I think also have an interest, and I think also have got an insider information that if you anticipate to do studies, and when there's a ward meeting, you are home. Go and observe what is happening there. See who's participating, who's not, who's included, and who is not included. The kind of language that they are using, the kind of references that they're American. There's also important, and I think there's also a scholarly kind of finding that I also find, which might also be problematic, that there's a tendency of thinking that stakeholder engagement and public participation is the same thing. While it is not, it is not the same thing. These are two different things, which need also to be explored further, which is what I'm also doing currently. Yeah. So, but my lesson is, don't fix your territory. Expand it, be as open as possible. And I think what also makes the PhD journey, although it's not simple, is to also have constant conversation with people. This is what I'm doing, and all of those. I'm sure you have already talked to Trevor. Yeah, we used to have some exchanges. Sometimes we talk about these things. I said, no, you can try this, you can also try that. It also I think this can become a very lonely journey, that can even send you to hospital if you are not careful. But you ought to have a group of people. And I was lucky, I had Aniki, I had Trevor, other people who were doing masters. So from time to time, we would even have long conversations. With Trevor at work, we talk about this thing, the whole, just to ease up, to say, no, I'm in the same boat that you, and it becomes
Yeah.
a collective thing that really, I think for me, what made it to be not simple, but also is to have a supporting supervisor, also have a group of people that you talk to, support structure, and all of those things. I mean, there are people that I used to talk to my study about that they've got nothing to do with it, but they was no, it's going to be okay. I think you will be fine. Just to have a listening ear to people, and I think
Yeah.
talk about it. Let it not be a secret of some sort, because you're gonna bottle it. And some of the things that you could easily resolve. Even how I found people of participant, it was me constantly talking to people that I think when I say no, I know so and so who can help you with it. And then it
Yeah.
made the whole journey to be even exciting. But above all, I enjoyed collecting data in the entire experience. I got to go to places that I have never went, yet I'm from that side, engaged with people. Some of the people will even go to show you the things that they are talking about. This is where things happen. This is and exciting. That was exciting and fulfilling for me to know that all the energy was not going into waste. Mm.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm
Mhm.
hoping also you'll find ways to bring back the insights, bring back the findings to them. I'm sure you've already done some of that. And
Mm.
so just bring back the findings, bring them back home, let people know what you found and how those affect them, and we hear what they think. This is why I sometimes wish we could have a sort of documentary element to our PhDs where with the written thesis, we're allowed to do sort of get
Oh,
a media crew to go with us and do sort of a
Well, well,
formalized
well, well,
documentary.
I'm planning of having a creative output, because I feel
Yeah,
like, because I also want to, because this is also interesting. Maybe I didn't send the methodology. The also advantageous thing that I think a lot of, especially those that want to engage in decolonizing the process, that
yeah,
it's only a few. I think about 40% of my data that was collected in English. The rest I use because I was know the language, the two languages that I used, the Spedi and Tsonga, and I was able to articulate, because you could see that people could articulate very well when you are engaging
yes,
them with their own in their own language. That is something that I think researchers should also take advantage of, because it might give you more than, because language barrier can also be a problem of expressing things so that is something that also benefited me a lot, because I was able to express things well. Even some naming conventions, you can't make them in English. You need to express them in the language that they are expressed in, and that made the whole process to be exciting. At some point, people didn't even want to stop. I said, no, but I can only collect data for 30 minutes, and we can have the. So I'm planning to have a creative output. I'm also thinking that we need to
yes,
also I also need to develop a manual, a simple manual in the two languages as well as in English, because this is also something that some of the examiners recommended that this can also help, because it doesn't help to have this nice academic written stuff that cannot feed back to the people that you have. We have
exactly.
creative output, explaining how this can be better, than also maybe work in collaboration with them. I'm also, I even told them, the municipality that I worked with, I said, I'm welcome if you need a workshop on anything. This is for all of us to do this.
Yes,
So this is the kind of thing that as researchers we constantly need to also, and also follow up with the, this thing of moving from one thing another thing is it's also a pro. I've done this. Let me pause and see what's happening. Let me go back, maybe do another study, follow up since that time, or maybe since we've provided you with a manual which I'm busy with, or maybe after the documentary, what do you think? What do you think should be done? What has changed, and all of those things.
yes.
So continuously, and treat our participants as co-creators of this knowledge, systems that we are trying to put in place. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. The important work that people do out there is really inspiring as well. So continue to do what you do.
Mm,
And just to close us off, let me just express my gratitude. Thank you so much for this conversation. I will be putting out this two-part or perhaps three-part conversation of ours as well, because
mm.
you've given us so much. So this might actually end up being a three-part conversation that we'll put out there. And I'm really hoping that it will take on a life of its own just for postgraduate students who are doing similar work to get a sense of some of the nuances that they need to be aware of. Because like you have alluded to in the conversation, a lot of what we do sometimes we find that they are sort of constricted within a very Euro-Western way of doing things. Firstly, because of the types of universities a lot of us are doing our PhDs at, and also just the kinds of colonialities of being that a lot of us
Yes,
find
yes,
ourselves in, but we don't
yes.
even see we don't even see the colo mentalities, as Fela Kuti used to call them. We don't even see them because we embody them so much, that coloniality so much that we are blinded to some of our biases and blind sides
Exactly.
when
The,
it
the,
comes to
the,
being decolonial in the way
the
of
things
doing
that
our work.
we're referring to as informal, they're exactly the same as the formal stuff, just the naming
Exactly.
convention, because that other one, it's named in Sikosa or is called
Yes.
Imbiz. We think it's a different thing.
Different. Yes, exactly.
Mm.
So this is quite important work. I look forward to the creative output that's going to come from here and all the other subsequent outputs that you are going to be producing from this work. Thank
Yes,
you very
yes.
much for your brain. Thank you for your mind. Thank you for your time. And thank you for the social work that you do to improve your communities and in extension, the communities alongside your communities. Yeah, and I think with that, we can close off this conversation. If you want to say something specific, please take a minute and do that, and then we may close off.
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And I think I really appreciate this, and I will continue to be grateful because we get to express what we are doing. Someone by just merely reading the thesis might not get what are the nuances, what went through,
Yeah.
what inspired one to do that, if they want to do the same thing, but they don't know what to do. But I say I want to thank you so much for the opportunity and everybody who have supported me, because a PhD comes with a lot of community behind it to say do it, do
Yes.
it. That is why even when you get it, everybody's it's happy because it's like that. It was a very exciting journey and a very painful one, because on the very same day that I remember our Aniki was at my place with trying to do the touch ups. Exactly, I think around 12:30, our other granny calls us and said, "No, my sister has passed on. You don't know whether
Oh man.
to stop the PhD or to continue." But the moment, but we saying to ourselves, no, she waited for us to get here so that she can go peacefully. And I hope she's continuing to rest so peaceful, knowing that we finished what we have started. Yes.
Oh, brilliantly finished what you have started, and now you've got both you
Mm.
and Aniki, whom I'm going to be speaking to as well in another episode, have
Yeah.
lovely, comfortable jobs now, doing great things, teaching students, changing lives, and producing graduates who might be the first in their families. So you guys are doing great work, and I'm sure she is resting in peace where she's at. Sorry for your loss in that regard as well. But thank you so much,
Thank you.
Doc.
Thank you.
This was
Yes.
so stimulating. We shall talk again, and please don't get tired of me when I invite you for other episodes based on other topics that we need to discuss.
No problem. No problem, Prof.
Excellent. Thank you so much.